Welcome to SkillUp Academy. In today's training session, we're going to show you leadership lessons from a former principal. I can't imagine all the leadership lessons that you can learn from being a principal, because you got to deal with a lot of students from different age groups, a lot of different teaching styles and all of that. So I feel like all these lessons will be helpful to any entrepreneurs, any people in the education space, and many other areas. So really looking forward to that. And your turn, Ariel.
Thank you, Danny. Glad to be here again, and thank you for that awesome introduction. If I could get ownership of the screen.
Let's do that.
Perfect. All right. So I'm going to start. Assuming that my slides will be just with a little bit about myself. So personally, my name is Ariel Margolis. I have 3 dogs. I live in the lovely town of Sharon, Massachusetts, on the East Coast of the United States. I've got a freshman in high school. I've got a 6th grader who I have to take to the orthodontist a little bit later today from a bracket that fell off. So looking forward to that. It's always an adventure. Love to garden. We love to box. I went this morning at 5:30. It is very therapeutic and quite, I would say it's good for mindfulness as well. So maybe I have to do another lesson on boxing and how it pertains. And I also love to ski. Professionally, I run my own business called eLearning Solved, design online e-learning content for both marketing and monetization purposes for startups, entrepreneurs, and ed tech companies. These are some of the companies and individuals I work with. We're going to be learning a little bit from Josh Spodek during this session. I also work part-time at a professional school outside of Boston as a director of student support, giving special ed services to graduate students. So just a little bit of my timeline as in terms of how I developed the leadership skills that I have and continue to learn. So back in 1997, probably when neither Remus or Danny were born, I was a child behavior specialist working at a special ed school. I just graduated college. It was at that point where I decided I was not going to go to medical school. I had gone to school to become a doctor, and I decided that that wasn't for me. So in 1999, I became a full-time middle school science and math teacher. And in 2004, I became a middle school principal. I was a middle school principal from then until about 2010. And then I returned to the classroom, my choice, because I had had enough. But I took a lot of the leadership skills with me. In 2014, I went on to higher ed and had 3 directorship titles. So I was director of online learning for the entire college and ran the department. I also was the director of the middle school program that met on Sundays. And I was and still am the director of student support. And then in 2018, I took on a different type of leadership skill as a CEO and founder of my company. So that's my timeline. And when we think of leaders and lessons learned and learning and to be learned, there are tons of leaders, both present and in the past, whom can share their wisdom, share their experience. And whether you're talking about entertainers, whether you're talking about political leaders, whether you're talking about role models, there are different types of learners, all of whom we can appreciate and glean the best practice. Thank you, Remus, for this Stalin. And here we go. I knew you were going to like Richard Branson in there. So these are lessons that I compiled that with the opportunity to really talk about it. And I haven't really shared it in a quote unquote formal setting. So it really gave me an opportunity to put this down on paper or in PowerPoint. So lesson 1 is, and I always thought that this quote came from Yogi Berra, who is a was a baseball player, and he used to make these very funny remarks that were truths, but also people would laugh at them, such as "You don't know what you don't know." I always thought that was Yogi Berra. Another line that he uses was, "A nickel ain't what it used to be." So, it's just these little quirky lines. But the truth is, when you are a leader, and this was true when I first became a middle school principal, I thought that, number one, I knew everything. And number two, more importantly and more dangerously, I thought that everyone thought and felt that I had to know everything, that I had to have the answers all the time. And the truth is, I don't know squat. I'm being PG on this because I know it's going out on YouTube, but it is very important that leaders understand that there is so much to learn out there from other leaders, both good and bad, that you can glean a lot and be able to incorporate those lessons. So understanding that how to interact with people. And so my first year as a principal, it was my rookie year. I made a ton of mistakes, and a lot of it was due to my hubrism and wanting to feel that prove that I could do the job, and that I had to do it because I knew everything. And the truth of the matter is that I didn't, and that we really don't have all the information. And the beauty that we live in now, the fact that we've got access to everybody globally, to leaders and entrepreneurs and experts in the field, we can ask those questions. When I was first a middle school principal back in 2004, the internet was just in its infancy, and reaching out to people was still very rare. So it really took, it took me by surprise at how little I actually knew. The next lesson was something that I've learned to understand is what the greatest fear is. It's not about failure. It really isn't. It's about change and accepting change. Every year, and as a teacher, I knew that every year I would have a new set of students in front of me. And I was okay with that. I saw that as an opportunity to grow and to learn. As a leader, as a middle school principal, I was scared of it. I was scared of what the new year was going to bring. I wanted things to be how they were because I knew it. I could rely on it. I could expect it. And really the greatest fear is to accept change, to embrace change, for better or for worse. So if you're thinking about what it is that is scaring you, and I just got off the phone with a veteran who I'm coaching, and really what he is struggling with is the fear of change, of switching careers, switching jobs. And it's scary because of the unknown. It's scary because you're not sure what it's going to bring. Are you going to be successful? Are you going to flop? Are you going to, is it going to increase your ability to be a better person, to be a better leader in your industry? So the second lesson is really accepting that change is inevitable. It's the one constant in the universe. And as a physics teacher, I used to teach that, change is constant. It's always happening, and to be open to it, not necessarily to be a daredevil. I'm not talking about those that, are complete risk takers, but more about understanding that what happens today is going to be different than what happens tomorrow. And knowing that change is going to happen, and even within the moment of that change, knowing that you are going to be flexible and adaptable allows you to understand and appreciate what's going to happen, and allows you to accept that the change is going to happen regardless of what we do. Yes, exactly, the uncertainty principle. We don't know. And so if we accept that we don't know what we don't know, and we are open to change, we become a better leader. We're actually calmer. We actually have a clearer vision. We actually are able to react to the new incident that occurs, whether it's a new fire we have to put out, whether it's a new opportunity, whether it's a new threat. Either way, in any event, we have to be able to be open to that change. One of the things that I learned most as a teacher was building the relationships with my students. That if I could impart to them that they were the most important thing in front of me at that moment in the world, that I could get them to go from place A to place B because they trusted me. And I was able to, and I believed in them. As I learned in my role as a principal, and certainly as a role as a director of a middle school program when I was in higher ed, after taking a hiatus from being a middle school principal, I understood that with every stakeholder group, it's all about the relationship. So I had to interact with parents who would come to me and they would make the most ridiculous comments or feedback or requests you could possibly ever imagine. So this was a private school. So parents were paying. So the expectation was, they were entitled to whatever they wanted. In the book of Esther, there's a phrase that's also used in Israel that translates to I will give you up to half of my kingdom. And so that's the equivalent of whatever you want, right? In essence, what I learned is as the parents are coming to me because they really want what's best for their kid. At least they perceive it. They may be wrong from my perspective as an educator, as a principal, right? That's really not what you want. But it's really about active listening. It's really about understanding that you're communicating with the parent's most precious commodity. That's their child. That the most important thing to them is their child. And so if I convey the same thing to them, that I care about their child, that their child is the most important thing to me at that moment, then I can start to build that relationship. I can start to build that trust. The same is true with clients, that when I am speaking with prospective clients or current clients, I make sure that I am affirming them when they are speaking. I make sure that I am actively listening to what they have to say, that I am making sure that I present both explicitly with my words and my voice and my eye focus and my hand motion, that I care about them. I care about their passion, what they want to do. I care about their goals. I care about them as individuals. And I do so to the point where I am willing to say, I may not be the right person for your company, or I may not be the right person for the job, for the work that you're looking for, because it really is being honest and being transparent. So if you don't have that honesty, if you don't put into that personal savings account, that personal relationship bank of making sure that who you are talking to, whether it is your partner, whether it is your children, whether it is your clients, whether it is your employees, if you don't convey that they are the most important thing to you at that moment, then you're not going to get very far. And that's hard to do as a leader because it's all about the relationship frame. It's all about the ability to look at who's in front of you and understand that it's a fellow human being. You may disagree on politics, you may disagree on approach, you may disagree on methodology, you may disagree on every single thing, but bottom line, you are 99% identical. So it can't be that 1% is going to cause you to have a rift. You can make it work. You can make it work by building upon the relationship. That's really all it's about. Gary Vee says when people are buying items or services or products, they're not buying the product or the service or the item. They're buying you, right? You think about Amazon, right? we're buying through Amazon because of the trust that they work hard. And granted, everyone has room for improvement, but they work hard at gaining my trust as a consumer. So that's why I shop. Right? It's all about the relationship. It's all about the ability to communicate with someone and that you value them. That you're not in it for the money, right? And I talked about that in a previous lesson. We're not in it for the money. We're in it because we want to help someone. We're in it because we want to improve and impact the world. And we do that through relationship building. So one of the things that I learned repeatedly, especially when I was a middle school principal, that you need to ask for help because you don't know everything. And because you're fearful of the change that's happening, you need to ask for help. So when I was a middle school principal, I had a coach, and he and I would meet probably every 2 weeks, and we would talk about strategies. We would talk about my fears. We would talk about my vision of what I want, the struggles that I was facing. We talked about, I apologize for my dogs barking. We talk about the ability to, the fact that I did not want to, I'm going to pause it for 1 second because they're being annoying. Hold on 1 second. There's another dog walking by. Sorry. Okay. We talk about getting help. We talk about, he and I would talk about the fact that at some point I was brave enough to say I did not want to be a middle school principal anymore. I wanted to return to the classroom because that's really where my passion was. That's what my purpose was, is to work with kids directly. So he helped me with that. He also taught me about mindfulness. He introduced me to John Kabat-Zinn and the mindfulness approach to meditation. So when I became a CEO, I reached out to my social media network. I reached out on LinkedIn. So these are 4 people that were early influencers with me. And Yigal Perry was actually a teacher who I hired and inherited when I started working at the college. So each of these folks, and you may recognize them, are experts in their own field. And yet they're all learners. They are constantly learning. So Staffo, he's known as the buff Harry Potter. He's a social media guru. You could talk to him about using LinkedIn or Instagram to gain clients, to personalize your brand. Claire Sewell is a C-level executive who left to become a coach. And so she coaches C-level executives on becoming more effective leaders. Yigal was a teacher of mine, but you wouldn't know it, but he's also a judo master. He runs his own dojo. He's also was the head of Diners Club, which was an old, it's not as commonplace as Visa or MasterCard, but he was head of Diners Club in Israel and left because his kids were saying, "We never see you." So that's when he started his own business. Sam Munslow was a teacher who turned coach. And so she coaches entrepreneurs, she coaches parents, she coaches individuals who want to work through their anxiety. Each of these people have taught me a ton, specifically about where do your beliefs come from? Where do your ideas that things have to go a certain way, that you have to do something in a particular manner because that's what you believe? So when I was first middle school principal, I believed that every teacher has to do what I say, and that if they don't, that I'm supposed to call them on it. And I would. And I'd be considered a jerk my first year because I'd call teachers on that they weren't meeting up to expectations. They weren't doing what they were supposed to do. So yes, here goes with the dictatorship. You got it. So understanding where your beliefs come from was hard work. And so I had a coach, a professional coach. I've also gone to therapy a couple of times to help me work through where these beliefs come from. And it was Joshua Spodek we're going to watch a video on. He is an entrepreneur. He started one of the first tech companies. He got his MBA at Columbia. He teaches at NYU. He teaches entrepreneurship at NYU. His biggest initiative right now is to environment awareness and having people make an impact on the environment in whatever is going to be, whatever they can do personally. So whether it's picking up trash, whether it's recycling, whether it's starting a recycling program in their town. So he wrote a book called Leadership Step by Step. And he talks about how you can change where your beliefs come from, but how you can change your beliefs. And changing your beliefs allows you to change your attitudes and your response to whatever comes your way, because you can change your beliefs. So let's listen to him a little bit, because he talks a little bit about it much more clearly than I could. Hopefully the video will work this time. I see we're thinking. All right, so I'm going to go see if that does it. Oh, I saw it for a second. Well, we can do it this way.
Right. I got a very high quality education. I went to Columbia Business School, top 5 school in the world. And to its credit, one of the top things I learned there was that you can learn to become a leader. Before that, I had the idea that a lot of people have, is that you have to be born a leader. I would look at like Martin Luther King and think he was born that way. He had something that I don't have. And to its credit, it said you can learn this. If you learn certain behaviors, you exhibit certain behaviors, if you behave in certain ways, you will become, people treat you like as a leader, they'll follow you. What then happened was that they lectured to me, they gave me case studies, and we talk about the cases in class, and I would write papers, but that's not what leaders do. Leaders don't debate. I mean, they might debate, but it's like, that's not the leadership part. And so there's a big belief that if I tell you theory, you will know what to do with it. And that I don't see that to be the case. It's kind of like saying, I'm going to tell you, here's how to play the piano, and expect that without you sitting at the keyboard and actually playing, that you're going to be good at playing the piano. So I don't want to say what's wrong with it. It's helpful to learn some theory, but to think that that's going to make you an effective leadership in practice, history just doesn't bear that out. Well, the current offerings, I mean, what compelled me to write this book and to develop the courses that the book is based on is to give people experiences, to give them the experience, the beliefs, the practices, and the skills of effective leadership. You can't get that from just reading. And so my book is based on a set of exercises that takes you from beginner, and actually the early stuff, if you're an advanced leader, these exercises are still useful. And the next one is a little bit more of a challenge and a little bit more useful or applicable in slightly different ways. The next one is a little bit more. And so there's no big jumps. These jumps cause you to feel anxiety if you're trying to do something you've never done before. Each one is a little bit more than the one before, but after you've done 5, 10 exercises, you're doing some really advanced stuff that for you is a little jump. But had you not done the exercises before, that would have been a really big jump. So that by the end, you're doing some really advanced stuff that any leader would benefit from knowing how to do. But for you, it's just a little bit more than the one before.
So just as a quick example, one of the things that I worked on as a leader was controlling my temper. And I went, with a coach, and I went through therapy. And one of the things that we were taught was, or that I was taught, that you should be able to, when you start to feel the anger rising, to stop and identify like what's really causing you to get angry, and then to stop the anger. Whether it's to take a deep breath, whether it's to meditate, whether it's to take space from it, and then proceed. What Josh does is he says, when you start to react to a certain situation. So, for example, if I started to get angry, he says you first stop, but then you say, why are you getting angry, and how do you want to respond? How would you rather respond? Versus, you shouldn't respond angrily. You should do some breathing exercises. You should stop and calm yourself down. He asks a more active question, which is, how do you want to start? What's causing you to react this way? What is the belief that is causing you to react this way? Is it the belief that someone is challenging your authority because they said no? Is it the belief that somebody doesn't respect your time because they're late? Is it the belief that, well, I'm important, and if they aren't agreeing with me, it means that that they don't see me as important? And is that really the belief that I want? What is the belief that I want? And so I would change it to, I want to have cooperation. I want the person to be understanding that my time is important. I want the person to appreciate that I am working really hard, but that I also appreciate them. And so he says to stop and then change the belief to what you want it to be, and then act on that belief. And so with the exercises in his book, you're able to change your beliefs, and so you can respond in the way that you really want to respond. That doesn't mean to say that you should never get angry. That doesn't mean to say you should never express the words, I am angry with your behavior, or I am angry with your action, or I am disappointed with your decision. But it's more about how you respond to it. And that comes from the beliefs that we were taught by the best teachers in the world, our parents, for better or for worse. And it is our job to either affirm and respect those beliefs or change them to what we want them to be. And so Josh, in his book, walks you through I believe it's a 7 or 10 step process of exercises on how to make this automatic. And there's always these beliefs and lessons to grow from. There's always this improvement plan. Where I was a year ago, I am much better off. And I know that I'm going to continue to work at it, so that way I am better in a year from now. So it becomes the belief system of improvement, the belief system of I am good today, I can be better tomorrow, and never reach perfection, ever. Becomes from this lesson that Josh offers that has been extraordinarily helpful for me during my last years as a middle school principal, and certainly as a CEO, and not to mention as a parent and also as a husband. Which leads me to lesson number 6, and this is something that I've incorporated in all of the lessons that I've taught with SkillUp, is that you need to reflect. The power of reflection allows us to see who we are, why we reacted the way we did, and what we can learn from it. We need to reflect in order to improve. We need to look at ourselves in that proverbial mirror and say, how did I respond today? What could I have done differently? Maybe I did this actually the way I wanted it to be, because of the habits that I took on, because I accepted the fact that I didn't know anything about this, the fact that I accepted help, the fact that I was willing to embrace change. Or maybe, you know what, I didn't react the way I wanted to. I'll give you a very clear example. My family and I were driving home late one Friday night, and a deer ran in front of the car my wife was driving. And so we stopped. My son screamed in the background, And I yelled at him. And I said, you don't yell in the car, you don't scream in the car, it distracts the driver, so on and so forth. And then I processed on the way home myself. And I said, actually, I was probably angry with him with other crap that he had done during the day. So it was really my explosiveness was the result of all this pent up stuff that I was working on. And this was just the fuse that set it off, was the deer running across. And so, number one, I apologized to him, and I told him why I was apologizing. I didn't mean to yell at him. And then my daughter, when we got home, started crying. I said, why are you crying? She said, you scared me by yelling. And I said, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. I was scared. I was angry. And I'm sorry. And in years past, I would beat myself up over that because I thought I should be perfect. I thought I should know exactly how to be all the time. The fact is, I'm human. So I apologized. I accepted what I had done. I learned from it, and I moved on. I didn't let myself beat up. I didn't let the thoughts in my head become anything more powerful than what they were. Were just thoughts. I didn't associate an emotion with them. I didn't linger on them. And as a result, I was much healthier. I let it go. I made changes, but I also let it go. I forgave myself. And so that's what the power of reflecting does. It allows you to see who you are, and also who you want to be from whom you've become. So taking that type of advice, taking the self-reflection versus the advice of others, is a powerful tool. And finally, in honor of Danny, I don't know if you're familiar with this quote, but you need to be able to laugh at yourself always. And Remus and I, in our long conversation, I'm looking forward to our next one, laughed a lot. You can't take yourself seriously. That was my mistake as a leader the first time around. I took myself way too seriously. I was 29. I was a middle school principal. I was probably one of the youngest principals ever in the United States. And, I thought I could be like Captain Kirk, and rule the galaxy. Nope. I took myself way too seriously. So my second time around, when I was a middle school principal at the middle school program at the college, I did not take myself seriously at all. I wasn't a goof off, but I made sure to laugh at myself. I made sure to never take myself too seriously. And especially in college life, when you are surrounded by academicians and everybody has alphabet soup after their name and before their name as well, Dr. So-and-so, so-and-so, MHL, DHL, Dean of Academic this and faculty professor of blah, 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 right? Like, come on. You're a human being just like me, right? You got to be able to relate to people. That's all goes back to lesson 2, like lesson 3 rather, about relating to people. Humor is a great way to relate to people. Not taking yourself too seriously is a great way to understand that we're all human. We all are learning. We are all students, and we have a lot more to learn from. And if you go back in time, you look at the great leaders, Caesar, Napoleon, they all had good senses of humor. Even Stalin had a sardonic sense of humor, but he had a sense of humor. So understanding, being able to laugh at yourself is something that is an important lesson to consider. And those are all the lessons that I've learned so far in my 10 years of being a principal and 1 year of being a CEO. I'm sure there'll be more, and in another 5 years, I'll probably be able to add on another 7 lessons. So, I think that, so hopefully you have gained some insight into how not to be a leader, but also what qualities come from being from having good leadership and continuing to lead. So thank you.
Hey, thanks for that. I'm back. I think the lessons you shared here are actually a lot more to just personal development in general as well. And all seven lessons were I completely live by them for sure. And yeah, it took me a while as well to figure them out. And we hear it all the time, and the problem is we don't really understand them. So it's really important, guys, to understand these lessons. It leads to a lot of really good things. And before I forget, thank you for the compliment. Not being born in '97. That's wow. I look really young. I like that. But I was actually 11 years old. So
all right.
So that's good. That's good. I know you got to go in 9 minutes. So I know Remus had a bunch of questions. I also had a bunch of questions, and so we're not going to be able to go through them, sadly, this time around. But I'm wondering maybe if next month, if you'd be willing to do some kind of interview style AMA kind of thing, ask me anything. And we could invite a bunch of people to ask questions in the chat, and myself as well. And that could also be a good format for a podcast potentially.
Absolutely, that'd be fun.
Cool, excellent. Yeah, because I was reading Remus questions, which are not that simple to answer in a quick answer and with a quick answer, and it was the same for some of my own questions. So.
Well, I'm happy to tackle one of each since we have a little bit of time, if that's all right.
All right. So Remus, what's your most important question? And in the meantime, I'm going to ask you, I guess, this might not necessarily be my best question, but you mentioned about asking for help, and you mentioned coaches and that kind of stuff. So I'm wondering, one, how did you reach out to them? And two, a lot of people, coaching is usually not a free service. So how do you afford a coach, and how do you value if it's going to be worth it for you?
Great question. So when I was a middle school principal, it was part of my professional development to get a coach. I requested it. Most principals, both public and private, are usually assigned a coach or given a coach.
That's cool.
In addition, and this answers to your other question in terms of cost, typically within your network or within your realm, you can find someone that is willing to quote unquote coach you for free. So even if it's just meeting once a month or once every 2 weeks, again, depending on the type of coaching you're looking for, people are willing to give because they want to help others. And so they may be in corporate America, but their true passion lies with helping others. So, reaching out to your network, and if someone is willing to speak with you, and sort of say like, can I get your advice on something? Can I get your feedback? And striking up a conversation. And usually it's a two-way street. So both the coach and the coachee benefit from it.
Yeah, for sure.
So, that's certainly one. And in terms of the value of it, and so I also, I coach veterans and those that are transitioning out of the armed service. I do that for free as a way of giving back. So in terms of the value of it, like how much does it coaching can run anywhere from $50 a session to $500.
More than that.
Or more, right? So, in terms of the value, I think it really is how much. A lot of it depends on the relationship, right? If your coach is pushing you out of your comfort zone, but not to the point where you are totally lost. And if the coach is smart enough to ask you regularly, has this been valuable for you? Is this helpful to you? Because if it's not, I need to know that so that way I can pivot, or maybe we need to have another coach. Maybe I'm not the right coach for you. A lot of coaches aren't necessarily willing to do that. The good ones are.
It's hard to be honest about this in a way. Like, it's hard to be like, we're all scared of doing a bad job, especially in the self-help business like that.
Yes.
Am I doing a good job for you? And that's very important. That's absolutely important. If you really care about the people you're trying to help, this is the best thing to do.
Exactly. Because if you're not helping the person, then you shouldn't be taking their money. And you also shouldn't be taking their time. Mm-hmm. So that's really that's really my 2 cents on what coaching is. But you can 90% of the time you can find someone that is willing to coach you for free or for very little, versus a formal coaching session.
Mm-hmm.
And so Remus's question, the last question. What do you do to make sure you act according to your beliefs? There is a thing called cognitive dissonance where one's beliefs and actions are in contradiction. That's an awesome question. If you are able to recognize that there's dissonance in your actions and in your thinking, and usually you need outside people to tell you this, whether it's a friend, whether it's a colleague, could be even a child, for example. You have to be able to be in a place to receive it. If you're not in that place to receive it, if you're not willing to hear that feedback, then it doesn't matter who's telling you. You will always have that dissonance. But the truth of the matter is, if you acknowledge that there is dissonance, the do as I say, not as I do philosophy, if you're able to recognize that that's just part of who we are and that we strive not to do that, we strive to do as I say and as I do, and that there is synchrony with it, you are then going to be a better leader. But you're always going to have that dissonance because your beliefs are going to be changing because you're interacting with individuals. In any type of situation, unless you're a hermit and you are going to isolate yourself from society, you are always going to be interacting with people, and people change. People are constantly changing. Therefore, your beliefs are going to change. So you need to be able to accept that feedback, accept that you're going to be learning, and that the cognitive dissonance is just an opportunity to learn. But again, it's your choice. If you're not choosing to, then that dissonance is going to remain. You can still lead. You can still be a quote-unquote effective leader, but you're not going to be as effective as you could be if you understand that it is a constant work in progress, just as you are a constant work in progress.
All right. There's a quote. I don't remember who said it. It's something like, "We're all diamonds in the rough."
Yes, yeah. Absolutely.
In some ways, it's kind of like that.
Absolutely.
All right. So you got to go.
I do.
So thanks for this training session. It was incredible lessons, 7 lessons, and a bunch of Richard Branson photos, which is great. A lot of comics as well. So thanks for all these incredible lessons, and I hope you guys learned something. And if you're watching the recorded version of this video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. So this was SkillUp Academy, and we'll see you guys Friday. All right.
Awesome.
Thanks.